Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming to today's workshop with the Hiram College Library. This event was sponsored in part by the State Library of Ohio and the Institute, oh boy, I should have written this down, IMLS, which is the Institute for Museum and Library Services, but it might be the Institute of Museum and Library Services, so hopefully one of those is correct. But in any case, we're providing a variety of different workshops all semester long and into the summer that are open to the public, as well as some that are specific for campus. So thank you so much today to Lorna Metzger, who is one of our library student workers who happened to be doing something with Notability. And I said, oh my goodness, you are amazing at this. You should do a workshop. And so she agreed to do that and agreed to be recorded. So we appreciate that. And so that recording will be available on the library's website, and we'll make it available on demand as well. So I will turn it over to you, Lorna. Go ahead and show us Notability.
Hello. Okay, so I want to say first about Notability in the program, that it's a very cool app. So I'm assuming that everybody that's watching this or here knows about Notability. The Hiram provides it for us through the Notability for organizations, so we all get to use it. Hello. And so I just welcome you to have your iPad or your laptop or your phone or whatever you use Notability on open, so that you can just play around while I'm talking. It's going to be a really casual thing as we explore kind of Notability 101, and then the ways that I use Notability to keep myself in check. And hopefully there'll be my goal is that there'll be two things that everybody is oh my gosh, I have learned something that I can use going forward for Notability. It's kind of a given that when you're doing a program centered around technology that it might not always work and cooperate. So I'm going to give myself some grace now for any future mishaps that might happen during this little workshop. I'll also give myself grace to the past, because preparing for this, I ended up deleting my entire weekly schedule going back a year and a half off of my iPad, and had to deal with some adjustments. But I'll kind of show you guys how to solve those problems too, because that happens with technology. It doesn't always work out. Also, Notability isn't just something I'll say this a few times, but as we're going through it, it's not just, oh, I'm not a type A person, so I'm not going to keep my stuff organized. That's just not who I am. I'm really not. I'm not somebody that's always got things in order, and that's kind of why Notability works for me. It's a really customizable program, which can make it hard to show. So I'm not going to be able to show you 100% of everything Notability has to offer, but it's super customizable to what works for you personally. So that's a really good thing to keep in mind if you're looking at what I've got going on, and you're that's ridiculous, that's not for me. Well, that's okay, because you can make it for you. Okay, so we'll open up Notability. So we'll start our little Notability 101 of what the app is. So when you open it up, this is what it's going to look like. This is called your library. It's where you've got all of your notes stored. And before we do anything there, we're going to open up the settings. It's in the top left corner, because this is where you can start with that customization that I was talking about. So that's where you can choose the theme that you'd like for your Notability. I chose group because I like the color purple. You can choose the default document type, the colors you would like, and the kind of ruling on the plate, how you want your typing to look, all of that, how you want your handwriting to work. This is just how you're going to change how the default settings of Notability work for you. And I suggest playing around with that a lot, because every little specific thing will just help it make more sense for how you like to use the app. Okay, so you can organize your notes using dividers and subjects, and they show up on this left-hand column here. I have all of my classes and different group works. I had an internship, and then I have general subjects. So I'll show you guys how to make a group. So I'll open up my group. This is a divider. I'm gonna make a new group for the library. I think it's about time to have one for the library. And then under my library group, I'm going to make a subject for the Notability workshop. And I'm going to drag this old library subject by holding it in, if it's gonna do that for a minute. Yeah, hold it in, and I'm gonna drag it to my new library group. Because now I can add new things for this workshop in here, and then it's going to be like organized into this subject. I'm going to change the color so that it matches the other one. I do use color coding, and I'll talk about that a little bit, but usually for like the subjects and the notes, I just use whatever I think will look kind of pretty or match that aesthetic for it. So you want to create a new note. You're going to hit new in the top right corner, and it'll should pop up. All right, and so this is my default note. It might look a little bit different to you. And yeah, so again, with the customization, you can go into the top right corner, and it'll open up a little bar of all these things you can do. And if you want to change how the note looks, you just go to template settings, and then you can go down to like the basic templates and change this color, the ruling on the paper. And there's more you can do, but we're going to deal with this for now while we deal with the basics. At the top of the screen, you'll see a little hotbar of all of these little tools. I'm moving it around now. You can drag it with your finger or your mouse, and you can move it to different parts of your screen depending on what you need. And it has all of these tools that you would use typically, and you can also customize this hitting the little gear icon. And again, like play around with that, like so you figure out what you'd like. But I have some pens at the top, and I can change the colors of the pens. I can scroll through preset palettes that they have. I can go on this little color chart, or even drag and drop and choose a color from the file I have open. I kind of usually stick a little basic. I have some of the basic preset colors they have, and I just like them to be a little different so that they stand out against each other. I don't usually like to work with like a lot of blues or like a lot of reds, because I want the colors to like mean different things to me and stand out. So we'll start with the blue, and you can use your Apple Pencil or your finger if you have it set up that way, and you can just write like that. You can double tap your Apple Pencil or click the eraser to erase. You have like the whole or partial erasing. So the difference would be this is partial, and then this is whole. Oops. And for all of the different pens, you can change like the size. So if you want it really thick or really thin, and that's all kind of up to your preference. And so I would suggest playing around with some of the different pens. I mostly use the 2 regular pens that they have, and then the highlighter. And what I really like about the highlighting is you can choose like the same color, and it like looks a little different because the highlighting is kind of like transparent. So like it gives you an easy way to like color match. You don't have to like figure out which ones to use. And then with the highlighter, it'll also, like when you overlap it, it'll change the color there, which can be useful if you're using it for like art or different types of color coding. People can find that useful. You can also type with Notability. That's a really big thing that it does. You just have to hit the text bar, and you can tap anywhere, or draw like your own text box, and you can just type away. And it's got a pretty simple like user interface at the bottom of like what you want to do with the different like things you might type. And then when you tap the text box, you can also title your note. So that can help you. I suggest adding a title to all of your notes, because then you can search them easily. And in the little hotbar, you have like the ruler, which can give you like straight lines. You can also get a straight line by like holding your stylus and then pulling it. So instead of just being really quick writing your lines, you can just hold the stylus and it'll make a straight line for you. But if you want it more exact, you can use the ruler. You just swipe it away, throw it, and it'll go away. So that's kind of like the Notability basics. If you've never used it before, that's how you can just get started. But now onto like the maybe like less basic things.
This just made my whole day.
Okay, so now onto the less basic things. So for instance, if you decide you don't want that file anymore, you can just swipe it to the left and hit delete. But if you're like me and you accidentally delete something that you definitely didn't want to delete, you can go to your settings and you can go to the recently deleted. That's in the bar there, and you can recover the note.
How long does it keep it in there before it goes away forever?
I think it's 30 days. Yeah. So you have some time to figure that out a little bit. So now I'll show you how I generally use Notability, kind of the So I make a weekly planner. So this is an example. This is from this past fall of just what my week was like. And the way that I make it look like this, I didn't draw all of this out, but Notability has something called a gallery, which you can access in two ways. So the main way that I usually do is I go back to the template settings that we talked about, and it has like a from the gallery page, and you can choose their the ones that they've chosen to highlight, or you can browse and search for something that's like more specific to what you're looking for. So if you're looking for like a food diary, like you can look and see, like these are things that other people that use Notability have made and decided to publish for other people to use. And that's how I've chosen like what type of planner I like. So I encourage you to look at the gallery and determine like what works with what makes sense with your brain or your personal aesthetic. So this is just what my calendar looked like in the fall during week 4. And here's a blank form of just what the template looks like. So what I usually do is go in, I like to be able to like do the dates myself, because then I'm not getting like a new template every week. So today is the 5th, 2/6. So then we'll go to Wednesday. And then those are kind of thin, so I might want to like make those a little thicker. Something you could do is choose this like lasso tool they have and select what you've written, and you can go to style and change the way that it looks. So I've had to do that a lot when I'm like, okay, I've just written a bunch of stuff and it's like way too thin or way too thick. It's not going to fit in the page anymore, and I can change it. Or if I'm like, okay, I actually don't like that color, I can change the way that it looks to fit the rest of the page better. And this lasso tool is really kind of like one of my main key tools to staying organized. So we'll write my little schedule out for today, so or for this week. So let's see. I have class tomorrow from 9:45 to 11:45, and I also have class on Thursdays from 9:45 to 11:45. But to kind of keep myself, if you'll see, to keep myself from just having a bunch of like scribbles of class, I like to use like color coding. So I like to use the highlight tool that I showed you, and I've just chosen my preset things. I think it's a good idea to start with maybe 3 colors, like work, class, and like extracurriculars. So my class color, I just use green. Just makes it simple for me. And then I can take that I just made and copy it and paste it over into Thursday, because I have that same class on Thursday. So I don't have to do it again.
I was going to ask if it has a copy feature.
Yeah. And this is really convenient, especially if I have super big reoccurring things. From week to week, I can just copy and paste them into the next time. But yeah, Betty.
So where can I find a good template? Like I'm on templates, but all I can see.
Okay, cool. So you'll go to so here's like the template settings, and then like it has like that, which it's showing you.
Yeah.
So you want to go to up towards the top. It's the first row. It says from the gallery, and it'll have some preset templates you can use, but you can hit browse more and go to the full gallery where you can like search specifically for weekly templates. If you're not already on a page, you can go back to the library on the homepage, and under the notes setting where it'll show you all of your notes, it will have an option to go right to the gallery from your library. Yeah. So in addition to my weekly calendar, I also have a monthly calendar. I keep it down over here, and this is where the this is the wrong one. This is where the copy feature kind of really comes into hand. So I've kind of developed my calendar over like a year and a half. I started making them in September of last year. And this is what my first one looked like. And you can see I started like on the 12th. It's like blank for that first week of September. But it's really simple. So I can just like go to a blank template. I like this because it's totally, I can do whatever I want with it. I can add in what month. I have to add in the days manually, which might seem like a pain, but me personally, it helps me recall when I'm scheduling things in person. Oh, you'd like me to do something on the 5th? Okay, I know that's going to be a Monday because I just filled that out personally. Maybe that's not the kind of tedious work you'd like to do, so you can find plenty of templates that have the specific month filled out already. But like I said, I have classes on Tuesdays from 9:45 to 11:45. So this is kind of how I do that. This is kind of messy. I don't have great handwriting, but it works for me. And I also have class from 1:45 to 3:45. And then I also have a weekly commitment for my organization on Tuesday nights. So I always just write WIR for writers in residence, and then I add my color-coded highlighting, and then I can copy and paste that over to Thursday, and then I can copy one week and paste it to the next week. And those are kind of big, but it just makes it a little easier to see. I can copy all of that and paste that into that next week too. So that's like, I don't know, 45 seconds, and I've gotten like my week filled at least for those 2 classes and that organizational like commitment. And it makes it pretty easy. I like decorating through the months. It like makes making a calendar fun. It's not the most fun thing in the world, but then you have something to do. So here's my calendar from last March, and it makes a lot of things easy. So you can see like we had spring break coming up. I had classes to worry about, and then I'll break down. Here's another tool that Notability has in the hotbar is a presenting. So you can have this kind of stylus, and it can have a tail so you can like write things and it'll go away, but that's not very necessary right now. So I was counting down to spring break. I had classes in green. I had my like organizational commitments in orange, and then I had my work in blue, and then fun things in purple. And I chose those colors because they're quite different from each other. Like it's going to be pretty easy to look at my week from a glance and know what was coming up, and it helps me from like scheduling over things. And then what I typically do is like on a Saturday or a Sunday, I'll like pull up my two notes side by side, which is a really nifty feature you can do in Notability. And I would look at my monthly schedule and make a schedule for the week. So, okay, I know that there's like the week of the 20th, there was going to be sap collection and a sap boil, and then the Bissell Symposium was that Wednesday. And so I could add that into my weekly schedule and make it like easier for me to look at things from a glance and like plan like longer term. I don't like go totally in advance. I'm only to April right now. I don't have much more craziness going on after that. But yeah, that's how my kind of like calendar breakdown works. And then the second main way that I use Notability is for my classes. So I have all of my classes broken down here by year, just because that's what makes sense and helps me find them. And specifically, I want to highlight my symbolic logic class that I took over this last fall 3 week. So you can, I'm going to pull something that's not Notability up real quick. I'm going to pull up my Moodle for that class, and you can take files from anywhere online, like Moodle or the New York Times or anything, and you can share that file directly to Notability. And so that's why like having set groups is easier, because then you know exactly where those are going. So I could choose, I don't know why it's green, it's so weird, but I could choose like my symbolic logic readings and find that note there, usually. But yeah, so I could take all of these like scans that my professor uploaded or that I would upload, and it usually shows up pretty quickly. There we go. Oh yeah, logic is like mathematical philosophy. But yeah, so I could pull up my textbook here, which I didn't want to buy because who buys their own textbooks? But I could like highlight specific things in the passages, and this brings me to like the next big important tool with Notability is their kind of like media button. So you can hit the little gallery icon with like the little mountain and sun, and you can add images, you can snap a photo, you can add a sticker, which are really cool. I'll walk through that. You can add a GIF. I don't usually do that. Or these sticky notes. I love using these sticky notes. They're just a big, solid colored text for you to use and write on or type on. And it just helps when you're like revising and you're like, okay, yeah, all right, this is something that I felt was important to write, so that it doesn't just get all caught up in the mess of things. The stickers are really cool, and I mostly use them with my like calendar making. I'll go back to that for a second, but it's a sticker on Notability is just where you can take the lasso tool that I showed you guys, my best friend, and you can hit save when you've lassoed an item that you've written, and that's now saved into your sticker gallery. So you can, mine are mostly doodles, but you can then just paste that everywhere. That's really useful. For example, I have pasted this like habit tracker that I made pretty messily, but it's just of my personal habits that I can use throughout the week or every day. So I usually take the highlight tool and I choose a nice color like pink, because that's a good color. And I'll be like, okay, I had a water bottle full of water. It's 32 ounces, and I can track how much water I've had that week. I have a goal to like read for at least 2 hours of pleasure every week, and I can highlight when I've hit 30 minutes, and then an hour, and then, or if I'm trying to get better at sewing, which I was when I've practiced for 20 minutes or up to an hour in a week. And the reason that the stickers are kind of better than just if I were to write this or copy it even, is that even when I've copied something that I've drawn out, so like if I tried to like make the like walking or the working out tracker, I could copy it, which is just as good, but if I make a mistake or something and I go to erase it, like it's gonna erase the thing I copied. But the sticker, it doesn't erase unless you're like erasing the whole big thing. But you can like lock it down pretty easily. But it just makes it easy, and then I like to save some of the doodles I make because Notability is like a fun place for art. But yeah, so it's really helpful for my classes, like trying to use my notes. So when I pull it up, and David, you said, wow, symbolic logic looks kind of complicated. And it is. It was a pretty hard class to follow. So this is my notes that I added in from the Moodle, and I was able to draw on directly while they were projected in class. So I didn't have to worry about copying my own personal notes down. But a really cool feature that Notability also has is in the hotbar, you can go to this microphone feature that they have, and you can record what's going on. I'm actually at the limit for this one, so I can't do it there. But you can play those recordings later on, and I wonder if it'll play it out loud, even though I'm on Zoom. I don't think so. So unfortunately, we will not hear Colin Anderson's great voice going for us. But when you decide to play it out loud, you're not just listening to it. You can go specifically to when you wrote those notes, and you can hear back what the professor or the presenter or you were saying when you wrote that note. So I can be like, okay, how do I do a harder translation? Like, what is A is sufficient condition for B? What does that even mean? Like, I can look at the notes that I was writing at the time, and it'll skip right in that recording to when my professor was explaining that to us in class. And so that was really useful, particularly for this class. This class also, we had to memorize different ways of solving problems. So I had the rules written down, but I needed to test myself if I had really gotten them. So Notability also has something called a tape feature. It's right next to the microphone and the presenter tool in my hotbar. But you just select it and you can place this tape down, and then you can tap it and it'll reveal it. So it helped me study what I needed for my quizzes and for my tests. And I'll reduce the tape there. But yeah, so the way that I was able to work in my classes really changed when I started using Notability more, and especially when I started using the calendar feature. So I didn't start just right in with having a big templated calendar. I found this in my notes, which was just a calendar I had from the fall of 2021, which is just, I made this myself. I made a big Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and I was like, okay, I have this homework due for my classes. I wrote it in green. I had extracurriculars in purple, whatever made sense for me to make sense of those things. And I wrote out a little calendar for myself. And so maybe this is what your calendar looks like to keep yourself organized, and then that totally works for you. I started just having more responsibilities pile on, and I also was having more commitments that I was making in advance next week, next month, for example, and I just needed a place to keep everything in one place. I have a physical calendar. I'm actually using it for to reference right now. The Student Academic Services give these out, so you can get one for free in the Student Academic Services office. But I didn't always have it on me, and I also didn't always want to pull it up. And it's really convenient to be able to pull up my email, for example, in one window, and then pull up Notability in another, especially when the Hiram highlights come out, and I can go right into my monthly calendar and just like add what's going on in the highlights to my calendar so it's in my know and I can go to them. But outside of that's kind of how I use things. If there's anything in particular that somebody has a question about with Notability or about what I kind of talked about, feel free to ask. And yeah, but that's kind of my little overview of how I use the app.
Lorna, how did you just discover this by experimentation, or how did you learn how to do all of these things in Notability?
So I didn't use, I had heard about it online. When I decided to come to college, I followed some college influencers, and they were like, this is how I organize my notes and apps. But a lot of the people I knew that had gone to school didn't use Notability. They had big fancy spreadsheets, and I was like, okay, that's not for me at all. But there were just some classes that I had that we had to sign documents, and that's one of the biggest, when I showed how to import files, that's really just what I used Notability for the longest time, was importing a file that I had to sign, probably a drop slip or an ad slip or something, and then sharing it from there, sending it to somebody's email, and that's all I used Notability for. But as I started taking on more responsibilities, I got a campus job last fall. I started working for the library, and I took more executive positions in my student organizations. I just had a lot of commitments coming through that I wasn't able to keep track of just in my head. So I have never been able to really use an online calendar like Google Calendar or Microsoft Calendar. It just doesn't work for me. So I thought I was just a lost cause. But so I started writing notes just like the one that I showed a few minutes ago. I started writing notes like this of the stuff I had to remember was coming up. Because or else I would start missing out on things. And just being bored and playing around with the app, I saw the different things it had to offer. So if what you've just watched in this workshop doesn't make a lot of sense to you, or it just seemed like, okay, that's just so much, that's what you do. Well, I started from not really doing anything and just playing around with the app. I would kind of scold myself and be like, oh my gosh, I was just drawing on Notability for 20 minutes, or I was just scrolling around and messing with my files. But really, when you're doing that, you're getting yourself familiar with the features and how to kind of use it and keep yourself organized. So the more that I doodled on it, the more I knew how to use the different pen types, and it was just experience that kind of built up.
So this is kind of tangential to this, but so you become very reliable on this, right? Once you graduate, or students are higher graduate, they still use this after graduate? Do you know?
Yeah. So I talked to I hadn't even considered that, and then I talked to a friend that had left Hiram, and I was like, do you still have Notability on your iPad? And she was like, I do. So
Okay.
I believe that we'll still have access to Notability. However, I also predict that after I graduate, I might not have as much going on commitment-wise. I'll have a pretty stable schedule, not as many things to balance, and maybe my traditional paper planners would be enough for me at that point. But
Still
that's I've got a good chunk of change until I graduate. So I'm only a junior, right? Yeah. So I've got some time.
You mentioned the subjects and dividers. What's the difference between the two? So a subject is a major heading and dividers below that, or what was the?
So the divider is actually the major heading. So
Okay.
you can see I have these are the dividers, the ones with the arrows at the top, and then the subjects are at the bottom. And the difference is that that's a meeting I had with Betty. But the difference is that the dividers can hold the subjects, but the subjects kind of just stand alone. So things that you might need to have more organization of, so my classes, for example, symbolic logic, I wouldn't just want a symbolic logic subject. because there's readings to look at, there's homework, and there's notes to look at for me. So I would want to be able to look at all of my relevant materials but have them in their own space.
Okay.
So it's really just about deciding if you want to use a subject divider, what you're keeping on your app, or what would work for you.
I was playing with this.
So we kind of just went over the big, for our friends joining us, we kind of just went over the big Notability, how I use it, and the Notability 101. So not to put any pressure on the folks joining us, but if you have any burning Notability questions that you had on your mind prior to coming to the workshop that you'd like to ask, feel free. But we also have this workshop will be on the library's website for you to peruse. So if you're like, oh, I missed out and I was really hoping I would get my stuff together, then fret not. You could watch it on the library's website and even pull it up on Google and have Notability right to the left of it while you work if you wanted to.
Notability only on the iPad, or can you on your Mac?
You can use Notability on, I think, most devices. Like, I have it on my phone. I've used it on the Mac upstairs, like in the study lounge. So I think it's just about the devices that it's supported on, and then you can just log into your Notability account. And then what you really want to do, this is very important, is having your Notability saved to some sort of cloud service. So I have mine saved to OneDrive because Hiram's Microsoft. And then that way, your notes will be backed up in case anything happens, like an internet outage, which never happens. And that way, everything will be safe and secure.
Why don't we go over to a PC device? Because they're all, you mentioned all Apple devices. So we were working on PCs. Or
Maybe that's just because I have all Apple. But what is really useful too is if you happen to have spotty internet connection and you don't know how you're going to access some of your online material, when you save your files to Notability, you can access them offline. So, for example, I have homework. I have a class right now called How We Die, and I have all of my readings for that class for the next few weeks here so that I can read them at any time. And I don't have to wait for those web pages to load or go back and forth throughout the week, going back to Moodle where those are listed, or if I have to find them somewhere else. So it does help just having everything in one place.
If you make notations offline, though, do those survive when they come back? Do you get back online, or like update with the notations you made, or is it lost?
Yeah, I don't know how it works internet-wise, but anytime that I've used my Notability and it's not connected to Wi-Fi, it saves regardless. I don't know if it's some sort of internal thing, but you know, I'm a writing major, not a computer major.
Yeah, that's a good thing to know, though.
Yeah. So kind of to move into like the wrapping up stage of things, I would say some of the biggest like useful things to do for your Notability is if you go to like in your library, you have these 4 main tabs, all of your notes, your recent notes, your favorites, your unfiled. If you have a ton of unfiled notes, and that's how you kind of move everything, I would say focusing on making subjects and dividers for what makes sense for you. It doesn't have to be the clearest thing in the world. You know, I have a miscellaneous tab, and those notes, you know, don't really have a rhyme or reason sometimes. But just so that you can easily access things and make it faster when you're wanting to use the app, and then getting comfortable with how to use the gallery and choose something to upload and add on, because just giving yourself some time, if you feel like Notability is this like overwhelming thing, it's a cool tool, but it's not something that you are really comfortable with yet, just taking time every day, 5 to 10 minutes, to play around with the app in a way that is kind of like fun or enjoyable for you because you don't want it to feel like a chore, and it doesn't really feel like a chore for me now that I've made it into something that like looks the way that I want it to, and I can add my drawings and have fun with it like that. So just like I said at the beginning of the workshop, like it's a really customizable app. So what works for me might not work for you, but you won't know what works for you until you find a bunch of stuff that doesn't work.
Any other questions from the audience? All right, thank you very much, Lorna. And I'm going to put a link into the chat. We do have a survey because this was a grant-funded program. You can decide if you want to attend to fill it out or not. But if you can fill that out, we would greatly appreciate it. And thanks so much for the folks online. I will